A new era of NBC Nightly News started this week after Lester Holt signed off after 10 years in the anchor chair. Joining us right now is a man in that chair at our table, though, NBC Nightly News' new anchor, Tom Llamas. Good morning to you, sir.
Morning to you, Andrew. Morning to all of you. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you.
So, okay, we're going to talk about the TV landscape, what it means to be on at 6:30. I mean, this is like a vaunted chair, first of all.
It is, yeah.
So what does that feel like for your first night out?
It feels incredible, yeah. First night was last night. Look, it's the honor of a lifetime, right? I walked into 30 Rock in the year of 2000. I was an intern making no money. And I'll never forget when I came in, I heard, Tom. And I thought, oh, all these people know the intern. This is so nice. But it was Tom Brokaw, who was just behind me. And I remember thinking how cool that was, that people knew him as Tom and not just Tom Brokaw. But I've worked really hard, Andrew. You know, I've been doing it for more than 25 years, worked a lot of weekends, a lot of overnights, every shift, every job in a newsroom. And to take over for somebody like Lester, who's been a friend and a mentor, is incredible.
Okay, so here's the hard part.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the fractured media landscape? And the reason I mentioned that is you mentioned Tom Brokaw.
Yeah.
There was a time...
3 channels.
When there were 3 channels, and Tom Brokaw and Dan Rather, I mean, you could go down the list. Those were names.
Right.
And hopefully your name will become one of them. But it's a harder environment today to break out and become something where the entire country is watching every single night.
Not only 3 channels, in some cases, no remote controls, right? So if the TV was parked on a channel, it was going to be parked there all day. Listen, it's fractured. You can't ignore that. But I think people are consuming news more than ever before. So how do you stay on top? How do you thrive? I think you have to be everywhere. And it's one of the reasons why I'm doing Nightly News and I'm doing my streaming show. So we're going 90 minutes straight. Right when Nightly News ends, they flip a switch, the entire studio changes. It's my streaming show, Top Story. And I believe you have to be everywhere at all times.
We're doing 3 hours. He's doing an hour and a half, actually. An hour and a half a night.
Right. Yeah, hour and a half a night. And I think you have to be everywhere. And it's not just, you know, on television or streaming. You got to win the text alert war, which is huge, which is basically when there's breaking news, making sure you get your alert out first, which drives people to your site. 3 to 5 years ago, NBC News sort of changed. They reinvested in digital. It's been a revolution. So when I go to a breaking news story now, it's not only 10 reporters on the story, there's 20 reporters because we have all of our digital reporters as well, all on Slack communicating. And I think you need to be there. You need to be
but how often are you just grabbing this and just talking to the phone? Do you think that's the future? I mean, do you think that anchors are supposed to do that? Because it's very interesting. It creates an intimacy, but also one of the things that makes an anchor is this feeling that they are somehow in this, like, separated space.
Yeah, look, I don't think the people on social media, on TikTok or Instagram, that are getting their news from there are going to come to Nightly News, right? But I think it's good for brand awareness. It's good for NBC News in general because you want to build those viewers early on in their lives and get used to that habit of watching you and seeing you. So I think it's important. But, look, I'm not going to try to be a TikTok anchor. That's not who I am. I'm going to be the anchor of Nightly News, and I'm going to be who I am.
And the anchor role has changed significantly. I think people have to feel a much more personal connection with you because of how they do feel this with the streaming show, with the anything else that goes.
I agree with you, but I think, you know, you can't lie to that thing right there, right? That thing sees right through you. And I think the viewers know that as well, and I think they're way savvier than a lot of people.
But I think the viewers have changed over time, too. I think the viewers are much smarter viewers than they used to be, and I think there has to be an authenticity and a real talk that comes no matter where you are.
I completely agree with you, and one of the things we're going to be pushing on Nightly News, and one of the things I believe in, is immersion journalism. And what is that? That basically, you show the viewers that you are working the story. So if you're doing interviews, you're doing 2-shot interviews. If it's taking you a day and a half to get to a story in Peru, to interview the people at the church where the Pope came from, Pope Leo came from, let's show them that because that process is interesting, but it also shows that you are working the story and that you're out there in the field. Listen, I think at the end of the day, and I've been saying this because I've done a lot of interviews about this new gig, I work for NBC News, but I work for the viewer. And the best journalist and the best type of journalism never forgets that.
Yeah, I said that, I think, last week. I was kidding, but the only boss we have is the viewer.
100%.
Which sometimes gives you some impunity about listening to other bosses, but that wasn't my point. You know what else is important is it's still important that the 6 o'clock New York guys and gals, you need that lead-in still. And
still huge, yeah.
It is, because when I watch TV during the day on NBC, those are what the commercials are for all of our local people. And I think that's what, in the big markets around the country, it's still like that. And then they're tuned in. They watch the local news at 6, and then there you are at 6:30.
Local news. I came from local news. Spent some of my best years working in newsrooms in Miami and New York City. And really hone my skills there. NBC News did something interesting. Over the last month, they actually pulled me off the air in a big way, and I traveled the country, going to local stations.
Still have to do that.
Getting into local newsrooms, meeting with anchors and reporters from all over the country, from places like Memphis and Baltimore and Cincinnati, and getting to know these people, listening to them, making sure that they know who I am, but I know who they are. So when they need, because we ask them for help a lot. There are eyes and ears all over the country in these towns and cities where maybe we don't have bureaus. And it was, I got to tell you, it was thrilling to talk to them, and it was invigorating because local news is great. They're still working real hard. They've never been asked to do more. And it's really nice to see.
Okay, so here's my question.
Go for it.
After you've gone on this road show of sorts, you've been around the country.
Yeah.
How do you think people feel genuinely about the economy right now?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. The two stories that I saw in every local newsroom were immigration raids that were happening in these towns and cities, and then tariff stories. And those were leading the newscasts across the board. And it was funny because every time I looked up, I was like, wow. I was like, because usually every lead is different in every city, but universally right now, that's what people are talking about, and that's what people are doing. I think what Courtney did just now, that was a masterclass on how to do the tariff story. I think it's really complicated. I think it's changing people's viewing habits. Someone like myself, I watched the Today Show, and my next move is CNBC because I know I got to understand the business news of the day. It wasn't always that way. I mean, I've always watched CNBC, but now every day it changes. The tariffs, every day there's new news, and it's going to affect people's bottom lines.
How's your life, you think, going to change because of this?
I talk to Lester a lot about this because the demands obviously are great. And every American deals with this, right? The work-life balance. But my day is getting longer. Luckily, my kids and my wife have known me always as a network news correspondent or anchor. So if you have to leave a Little League game or a school play, it's tough. But they understand that dad sort of has this responsibility. My wife, luckily for our marriage and for our family, she's a former executive producer in news. And so she understands this completely.
Gets it.
She gets it. And she's our rock. And I owe everything to her.
Okay, when you travel, do you bring a blazer, a shirt, and a tie wherever you go? Because it's something, like I'm saying when you go on vacation, even.
I bring my passport everywhere. I don't necessarily bring clothes because that'll be too much, but I bring my passport anytime I get on a plane, regardless if I'm going to Miami.
You don't have a real ID. None of us
yeah, that's
true. Why I bring my passport right now.
I actually don't have a real ID either. Yeah. I got my appointment in July, though. But no, I always carry a passport. I'm ready to go.
By the way, news you can use on the passport thing, because I just learned this. If you have global entry and you have that little ID that comes with it, you can use that instead of a passport.
I do have that. Okay.
So
I didn't know that
you
worked.
don't have to. Yes.
Andrew, thank you.
We're trying here, folks.
Guys, world travelers, man.
Tom,
you're cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.